Hello and welcome to the Gonzales Mitchell Show. I'm Clay Mitchell.
And I'm Patrick Gonzalez.
And today, our very special guest is Tyrone Keys. Tyrone is a financial and real estate professional. His company is MCE FinTech. I said that right, didn't I, Tyrone?
Yep, that's right. Yep.
And today we're going to discuss all things budget, all things financial, all things deficit. Boy, there's so much going on, Tyrone. I don't know where to begin other than we have a 36, 37 trillion dollar national debt, my friend. What are we going to do?
Well, uh, one thing we really need to do, and I'm happy that it's starting, is we're starting to look at our expenditures and say, where can we tighten the belt? Of course, this is the federal budget we're talking about, the federal debt, $37 trillion. We're almost there. Um, and that's not even counting unfunded liabilities. Okay. Now, I just want to give you guys some perspective on the magnitude of 1 trillion. 1 trillion seconds ago was 30,000 years ago. Okay.
Jeez.
So this is it now $37 trillion in debt. We got a lot of work to do.
Yes, we do. Now, unfunded liabilities has to do with promises made under the mandatory and entitlement spending. What what does that sum look like at this point?
There are estimates that we could be over $200 trillion when you account that the Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And I think that at some point, our government is going to have to communicate to a group of us, maybe my generation, that we're going to have to raise the retirement age and probably cut benefits as well. The reality is, Social Security was never designed to carry people for 30 years worth of retirement, you know? And so we're running up against fewer people in the workforce shouldering the burden for more retirees. It's just unsustainable. We're going to have to rethink that whole thing. And go back to the Bush administration. There has to be some allowance for allowing this money to grow in the markets. Okay. Otherwise, I don't have a great feeling about the sustainability of it.
My understanding is ever since, say, the mid 60s, when the Great Society was proposed, all of a sudden, Washington looked at this Social Security quote unquote trust fund and said, hey, there's a pile of money. Let's put it to work. Of course, he didn't just pay for the Great Society programs. We had the Vietnam War, which cost a lot of money. And all of a sudden, the floodgates opened. Uh, and it hasn't stopped really since. You mentioned raising the retirement age as a way to help make this more sustainable. President Trump in the campaign said, I'm not touching Social Security. Well, in my view, he doesn't have to because operation of law under the bill passed, I think it was in the mid 80s, benefits are automatically cut somewhere around 30%. I think it's in 2034 now.
Yeah, yeah,
Nobody has to do anything. There it is. It's cut. How's
yeah.
that going to go over?
Well, I think that we're getting kind of conditioned to understand that we cannot keep spending the way we have been as a country. Okay, a lot of the largesse it's just going to have to stop. And if we don't do it now, then we're going to see these cuts just have to inevitably, they're going to have to cut deeper into federal government monies flowing into the states and the localities. Okay. So before we get there, I think people should definitely take advantage of all of the other vehicles that are out there to help them have a comfortable retirement and not just rely on Social Security. I don't think that's a good idea anyway, considering inflation. So if you're 401k, if you got a 401k at the job, especially if they match, take full advantage of that.
Yeah.
Uh, the IRA, traditional and Roth, they're out there. There are plenty of vehicles. Actually, this is a great opportunity we have, because we have a lot of really solid vehicles that we can put money into to help us have just really comfortable retirements with Social Security as a supplement.
Patrick, what do you think of the government cutting your Social Security benefits in a couple of years?
Well, we'll see. I'm willing to do my part. I guess what frustrates me, Clay and Tyrone, is just, I always kind of try to put things in simple terms. And I know government is not family, but, can you imagine a family budget that was designed kind of the way government operates? That would be a dysfunctional family, the likes of which we ain't never seen. And I guess, again, I believe in sort of the big theme and then the old, think globally, act locally. And what kind of frustrates me, Tyrone, is when I think back on January 20th, 1961. Now I didn't hear it live, but when John F. Kennedy said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." That mentality, that philosophy was much more in play. And we have gotten so far away from that, as demonstrated by the recent, we're going to forgive your college loans, or we're going to do this. You take an obligation on this earth and you should have to fulfill it. I mean, and not only the financial aspect of it, but the human. You want to become a good, strong person, you just got to do the basics. And Tyrone, what frustrates me so much, and I apologize for whining and moaning and complaining, we have gotten so far away from the basics that make for a happy life. I don't know what to do.
I've got to agree with you there. I think that one of the country's greatest strengths, our security, our prosperity, those things have, in a way, worked toward our detriment, because it's made us very decadent. Okay, and also our consumer culture and focus on materialism has driven us away from the things that truly matter. Okay, which is family, culture. I always tell people, you guys remember this show, Dallas. Okay.
Yes, yes.
JRU in Dallas was huge in Eastern Europe, of all places. Reason being, because the family lived in that one house together. Okay. And it just drove home the notion, beyond the soap opera aspect of it. They liked seeing that the family was there together. And we've gotten away from that. We've gotten into this mindset. Well, you're 25 years old, go buy a McMansion. Okay. We got to get back to understanding what really matters, and also listening to, advice that JFK, who I don't think JFK could get nominated in the Democrat Party of today. But how do we contribute to this country that has been so good to us? And I mean, if you travel and if you know about other parts of the world, there's no place you'd rather be, okay, than right here. There's a reason people are crossing deserts and oceans. There's a reason the Cubans are modifying 1950s era pickups to cross shark infested waters to get here.
That's so true. I remember watching some of your Soldiers of Fortune videos and some of your writings where you say, people, you have to stop buying depreciable junk just to fill a house up. And once that house is filled up, you go out and get another house to fill it full of more stuff. What you need to do is take that money and put it into assets that increase in value, stocks, bonds, savings accounts, even real estate, and the like. And so much money is spent on stuff
Yeah.
that I think the normal person, if they were to take a look at what they did, could retire in comfort, uh, decades away. There's a lot of 30 somethings now that live they have profligate spending. They just spend when you should be putting that in the bank. And I know from watching your videos, you talk about the magic of compounding and how that works. Uh, what would be your advice to someone, say they're 35 years old and they haven't saved anything? What would your advice, because they're 30, 35 years out from retiring, what would your advice be to someone like that?
Sure, sure. One small point of order. It's Soldiers of Finance. I don't want to get sued by Soldiers of Fortune magazine. Soldiers of
Lord,
Finance.
I apologize.
No, no problem. On YouTube. But first of all, I had someone come to me in my family that is in their 60s, and they said, well, it's too late for me to start saving. They've got a pension from the U.S. Marines, and I'd like to save more. I'd like to get some investment. It's too late for me. And then I sat this person down and I said, the lifespan of our family is well into the 90s. So it's quite possible that you got at least 3 more decades on this planet.
Mhm.
You can start, you have plenty of time to start saving. And then I joke around with him. I said, and if you do nothing other than the money, then leave it to a younger generation. I said that in jest with that person, but that's true.
Right.
Empower the generations coming after you. All right. Just like Joe Kennedy had that vision. All right. Rockefeller had that vision. Plenty of Americans that we'll never know the names of have empowered successive generations of their family by purchasing assets that continue to appreciate over time. Rockefeller's fortune started up over 100 years ago, still going strong.
Yeah. Yeah.
The real quick about Rockefeller, the reason why you don't find his name on a lot of stuff, he's a really modest guy. Okay. But Spelman, the college for all girls, the historically black college and university, that's founded by John D. Rockefeller. Spelman was his wife's maiden name.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
Mhm.
I know the original John D. Rockefeller, I read where he would walk the street and he would hand out shiny new dimes to young kids and say, take this and turn it into something. And that was an example that I think needs to be replicated these days, where if someone's handed a few dollars, don't go out and spend this on something from some department store. Buy yourself a share of IBM or Apple or Nvidia or something like that, something that will increase in value. Tyrone, I know you've seen, I've witnessed the stock market, especially over the past year or so. AI is the new trend of the future, just like the internet was in the 90s. And some of those stocks, Nvidia and Broadcom, they've double, triple, quadrupled. It's it's something that someone can purchase and know that, given the daily ups and downs, eventually you're going to turn that into some sort of wealth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, when I first started becoming aware of the stock market, you used to, at that time, you were required to purchase stocks in what was called a round lot. So that meant you had to buy it in increments of 100 shares.
Mhm.
Now, of course, that's prohibitively expensive for most people. But do you know today you can purchase a fraction of one share? Okay. So any budget can start to acquire assets like that. All right. We've got plenty of videos on the channel that talks you through, Soldiers Finance channel talks you through how to evaluate a stock. Okay. We demystify it. I don't believe that this is, type of knowledge you should have to go up and talk to the oracle about. You can do this to an extent. Okay. If you, now I'm not talking about derivatives or anything like that, but evaluating a stock is something that we should be taught in school. But you can actually get into owning assets with very little money on the table. You can afford to go to Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks on a daily basis. You can certainly afford to start to purchase assets.
I remember, I think it was a friend of mine said to his wife, she was sitting having a Starbucks coffee and said, "Boy, you must be enjoying that $1,000 cup of coffee." And she's like, "What are you talking about? $5 a day times 7 days a week times 52 weeks a year, that runs into some change." And it's small changes like that, I think, that people need to understand. Instead of buying some flavored water, you could buy what you said, these fractional shares of assets that can increase in value.
Right.
Patrick, what kind of coffee you drinking?
Well, I drink the off-brand at Aldi's. I refuse to spend much more than $7 or $8 for a big can of it, so I am very
Yeah,
frugal with that. I'm totally into what Tyrone's saying about the stock market. I don't have a clue, but we've had people that have worked with their families for generations, and it's nice. Now, to me, I look at the stock market ultimately like I look at real estate. It doesn't matter what it's worth other than two times. And that's when you buy it and when you sell it. But I got to be honest, I sure do enjoy every now and then I'll be watching TV and they'll say, well, the stock market went up 2% today or whatever. And I'll go run to pull up our portfolio and look at it and say, oh, that's kind of sweet. Now, when they say it goes down, I don't look at it. But as far as what Tyrone's talking about, it is so, so true. If you had bought $1,000 in 1955 or whatever, and so if you were bought it and you were 20, you'd be 90. But if you had bought $1,000, Tyrone, of stock, and that was a lot of money in 1955-ish, whenever, of McDonald's, what would that be worth today? I don't have a clue. I bet it's a lot of money.
It'd be a lot more than $1,000.
It'd be a
it
lot
would.
more than 1,000.
Yeah.
And I just think that this kind of gets back what Tyrone's talking about with money changes everything. I think too many people look at that concept and think about what can I own, what can I possess. No, when you get old like me, possessions become burdens. I don't want anything anymore. But I dig, 30, 40 years old, you want the cool things. I dig it. But money changes everything when you grasp the concept that Tyrone's trying to communicate, and all of a sudden you recognize that money is power because money is security. Because money, when you get older, if you don't have to wake up every morning worrying about how am I going to
Right.
pay my bills, God, that makes life so much nicer.
And that's a very important point you hit upon. And by the way, I make my own coffee. It's a lot cheaper. But
Yeah.
when we were growing up, I grew up in West Baltimore. Okay, family full of love, very tight knit, big family. Okay, we had four houses within like a mile. Okay, and one thing my family understood was the value of owning real estate. Now, we didn't understand all the permutations. It was about having the house, owning the house. Okay. Beyond that, our family didn't know a lot about money at all. And there was always, we learned later as we got older, as kids got older, we learned that there was a lot of financial insecurity. But our parents and grandparents did a great job of we never even knew we were poor, okay, growing up. But as we started to understand these concepts, then it became very imperative for me to figure out how to move beyond that, all right, and how to make it so that successive generations of the family did not have to deal with that, okay. So controlling, everybody likes nice things, right? But I tell you what, Clayton, Pat, I like to dress, right?
Hmm.
I have gone into the Goodwill in Ellicott City. Find yourself a Goodwill in a nice neighborhood,
Yes.
okay, where when the folks, pass on, there's some former lawyer, big time lawyer, whose stuff is coming to Goodwill. And I think this vest is fits into that category. Okay, I've gone in there, I found Brooks Brothers blazers, and a lady laughed at me. She said, I bought the blazer up and it had a little hole. I got it fixed. I said, how much will you take off of this for this imperfection? She said, sir, nothing. You are at Goodwill. It's only $17. Okay. So, but vintage clothing. Okay. Save where
Yeah.
you can. Take that savings and then put it over into some assets. And before you know it, you will be happy you did.
Tyrone, I
Well,
do the exact same thing with clothing. The exact same thing.
That's
and
smart.
it's a smart way of doing it. And going along the lines of what we're talking about, Tyrone, you put little bits of money and let it grow. What do you think when we're talking about federal debt of the United States having a sovereign wealth fund or something to that effect, where the federal government's a market participant and and gets some return for the money that it has over time, to where maybe it does solve the Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid problem over time. But if the nation began that, I think it would lead to good things. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it at all. In fact, I do think, though, that what they're going to end up doing in order to prevent the appearance of favor, they're going to probably, if they go with market investments, do index funds. I think we'll see the purchase of a lot more gold. The United States, at least publicly, has not been a player in these gold purchases over the last few years, where the BRICS countries, okay, this is the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, that economic bloc they're building to counter the G7, they've been buying gold at incredible clips. So much so that if, just say, for instance, we went to a gold standard in the world today, a monetary gold standard, China would then be the richest, the wealthiest nation on earth because of the amount of gold that they have. So I think we're going to see investments in that. And also, Trump has expressed a an interest, at least, in a Bitcoin depository. So
Right.
there is El Salvador has done a lot with Bitcoin that we can take a look at and kind of examine. So I think the establishment of a sovereign wealth fund, I think it's going to go a long way toward. Now, there have to be some rules around this, because we can't have it being raided by successive administrations. So
Right.
they've got to put some legislation around it such that it is airtight. Really quick, uh, take Greenland as an example. Back in the 1860s, we offered Greenland uh, 100 $100 million in gold. We offered Denmark $100 million in gold for Greenland. If they put that in a sovereign wealth fund and not touched it, it would be worth $13 trillion today. So that
That's
just
amazing.
demonstrates the power of getting these assets and letting them sit. I don't care if you're an individual, a company, or country, the concept works the same.
That's amazing. And I got to tell you, Tyrone, I could go talking on and on for hours on this stuff. It's so interesting. And if I had to do life over again, I think I'd like to be a financial guy like you. It is an interesting world. But I
It
look at that
really
I
is.
look at the clock on the wall, Tyrone. Time's winding down, and it's time of the show where you have to say goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick. And Tyrone, thank you so much for coming on again. We'll have you on again soon. I'm sure there's going to be some sort of financial news breaking that we're going to need your expertise on. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tyrone.